Hey everyone, so in some of my Access database videos, I mentioned that there are certain best practices. The two that I want to look at in this video are not using spaces in field names, not using spaces in table names, and don't name a field with a reserved word such as date. If you want to use date, always have another word appended to it. So have it be hire date or something like that. And even at that, no space. It should be like hire underscore date or just hire date, no spaces. So I've mentioned those best practices, and I usually get some pushback as to how does it fail? Why does it fail? When does it fail? And does it actually fail? You're just saying that because someone said it years ago. So I want to give you a couple examples of some of the problems this can cause, and I'll give you a workaround, but just be aware, this is only one or two examples of where not abiding by those best practices can cause problems. So this is me just demonstrating that yes, there are indeed downstream issues. It's better just to use those best practices, but I get things get called into question, and so we should demonstrate. So I'm just in a blank database. We're going to create a class module, so it's basically just going to be a couple lines of code, and it will demonstrate a few problems that can happen. However, we don't really care about the form. We really don't care about the button. Again, it's just meant to be a quick way to execute the code. So even if you wouldn't do this in your own database, again, the form and the button is just meant to be a quick way to execute the code. So create blank form, view, design tab, and the button. I'll give you a couple seconds to catch up to that. This is just Windows security, so we'll click on open and then cancel that out. Okay, so now we have a form, now we have our button. We come up to property sheet when the button is selected. For the event tab, we want something to happen when we click, and this is how we create the class module. So we click on the ellipsis, click on code builder, click on OK, and I'm just going to paste this in here. We're going to review it, don't worry. Now, this isn't meant to be a Visual Basic or an SQL lesson per se. This is just a really easy way to demonstrate some of the problems that can happen. So overall, this starts off with Visual Basic. We're saying that there's a command we want to run, and the command is going to be written in SQL, and then the rest of it is actual SQL. The apostrophe just indicates that this is a remark statement and not being executed. So let's take that out so this will execute. So what is this saying? It's saying create a table. That will be the name of the table. This will be a field, and this will be the data type. So pretty straightforward. So we're going to save this. Wants me to save the form as well, so we'll click on OK, and now we'll go back to the form. So we click on View, and now we're going to execute that. So without fail, it created a table with that field name. So great. So now let's not use some of those best practices. Let's use spaces and watch what happens. So let's delete this table and then continue. So we go back to View, Design View, the button is selected, event is still selected, on click, we go back to our class module. So you want a space? So let's go ahead and put a space. We save that. We go back. Make sure the form is saved. We go to View, and now we're going to run it. And now it fails. That space breaks it. So, is there a way around it? Yes. So for this, you can use the symbol that is on the tilde key, which is next to the number 1 in the upper left corner of your keyboard. So if you put that there, and that there, and you save it, and then you close this so it stops the debugger. Save the form. Now you run it. Now it does work. But now you've added a little bit more complexity to your code, which you're going to have to continue to troubleshoot and perpetuate throughout any reference you make to this table. Every time you make a reference to this table, you now have to have that extra coding. So that's the point. Is it worth it? Is it really worth it just to have a space there? You could have an underscore and not have to do that. You could have you could just not have a space at all. So yes, it is usable, but this is just one example. It could fail in another way somewhere else. This is just one example of where it could fail. So let's delete that and continue. We go back to View, Design View, our button is selected, Event tab is selected, on click, we go to our class module. So now let's get rid of the space. So now, I mentioned not using words like date and not using spaces in column names, but let's do a combination of both. So hire date is what we want. So we fixed our table name back to not needing that. Save this. Go back to our form, save our form, and now it fails. Again, that space breaks it. Is there a way around it? Well, a couple of things you can do here. You can put the square brackets. And save it. Close it so it ends the debugger. Save it. And there you go. So yes, you can add a space, but once again, you've added more complexity to your code. This is just one instance. Again, what if you have 500 references to this field? You're just creating extra work for yourself. So let's delete that and continue. View, Design View, button selected, Property Sheet for Event, on click. So now we'll execute both of these. So it'll once again create that, and it'll have hire date there. So we'll put a space here for hire date, and it'll add that value. So run it, and now you get yet another error. So this time it's here because, again, hire date, because there's that space, confuses it. So put in our brackets, and we'll save this, close it so it undoes the debugger. We'll just open this up, but you can see it didn't create the value. So we'll delete the table, or else we'd get the error would get the error message because the table's already created. So let's try again. So again, it is possible, and you can do the workaround, but is it worth the extra effort? Because this is extremely tame compared to what you can do with SQL. This is a very simple statement. So imagine having to do that extra coding for every single reference to that field or to that table. So again, it's your choice what you do, but why make something unnecessarily complicated? And again, this is just one example and one workaround. It could fail in other ways in other places. So I hope this has been helpful. I hope that this demonstrates a couple examples of good best practices. And I guess that's about it for this video. So have a good day. And if you have any questions, just let me know.